None of the billions that were being offered were going to the WTA. Companies weren't just chasing Alex Eala. They were skipping the whole tour. A 19-year-old Filipino had surpassed a professional circuit built over 50 years in terms of financial utility. Nor by ranking dominance, nor by Grand Slam dominance, but by something much more dangerous to the establishment. Unbridled cultural attraction. Furthermore, the tennis community did more than just raise eyebrows when the financial figures began to surface. It did not breathe. Because there was no sponsorship story taking place. There was a change in power. A small-scale corporate revolution wrapped in a tennis skirt. Additionally, the WTA was unaware of its strategy. You'll see why the most important battle in women's tennis at the moment isn't taking place on any court if you stay focused. A particular kind of athlete transcends its sport before it appropriately recognizes them. It was Muhammad Ali. It was Serena Williams. And now, Alex Eala is doing it on a scale that includes business boardrooms from Manila to Manhattan, completely overhauling their marketing strategy, whether the WTA institution approves or not. Eala brought something to professional tennis that no coaching manual teaches. She was born in the Philippines, brought up under strict discipline, and trained at the Rafael Nadal Academy in Mallorca. Her story resonated with billions of people in Southeast Asia, Europe, and the Americas at the same time. It was a true cross-continental, multi-generational story. What marketing executives covertly refer to as a great cultural convergence was produced by this combination: the underdog location, the elite European training ground, and the contagious personality. Long before the rankings caught up, businesses took note. Eala's social media following had surpassed that of many players with higher rankings by the time she was making waves on the WTA tour. She had higher than average Instagram interaction rates for a tennis player. They were powerful enough for any athlete, anywhere in the world, in any sport. True audience connection is measured by brands through genuine communities' emotional investment rather than just follower counts. We are looking at data that required their analysts to verify the information twice. Sports companies, high-end watch manufacturers, tech giants, and telecom companies with sizable Southeast Asian customer bases. They were actively competing rather than just being interested. Discussions were progressing from exploratory discussions to significant financial pledges behind closed doors. Notably, these conversations were not taking place via WTA partnering channels. They were heading straight for Eala's attorney. This distinction is quite significant. The WTA operates using a traditional sports marketing framework. Income models built around the community, official tour partnerships, and centralized sponsorships. Although it was designed for a different era, the model worked well for decades. Before, a single athlete can attract more online interest than the entire company's promotion of her. Eala was a player whose unique brand gravity was drawing sponsors out of the tour's orbit completely, and she symbolized everything the previous model had failed to account for. Just by appearing and engaging with people on a frequency that WTA's institutional voice was unable to match, not by disagreement or conflict. There were more and more murmurs in tennis circles. Brand partners began informing agents representing other players that budget allocations were being examined. Rejuvenation recommendations started to get more subdued responses from tournament sponsors. Women's tennis wasn't losing money. It was concentrating on a single, distinct point of cultural gravity. There was a name for that point. There was a backhand to that point that might disrupt conversations. And that was only the beginning. When was the last time a teenager forced billion-dollar companies to completely reconsider their approach to sports marketing? Because it was already there at that point. There is a technique for numbers to get out of rooms. They were never meant to leave. The figures pertaining to Alex Eala's individual sponsorship portfolio that were being discussed in private conversations weren't minor endorsement agreements. Professional tennis players outside of the top 10 typically get mid-tier settings like this. A player who is still rising in the rankings, was placed in commercial negotiations typically reserved for veteran Grand Slam champions due to a type of financial commitment that was
Didn't want to share that stage. The jersey number insult was likely a test. Will she submit? Will she take the scraps we offer her? When the answer was silence, they cut her loose entirely. But silence is a powerful weapon, and Caitlin Clark has used it masterfully. While the internet burns with rage on her behalf, while pundits debate the fairness of the roster, and while rumors swirl about Sophie Cunningham refusing to play along, Clark has said almost nothing. She hasn't complained. She hasn't lashed out. She has simply gone back to work. She is breaking assist records, putting up triple-doubles, and proving every single night that she is one of the best players in the world. Rookie or not, this silence drives her critics crazy. They want her to crack. They want her to act entitled so they can justify their treatment of her. But by taking the high road, she highlights just how petty the league's actions are. If she had complained about being offered jersey number 12, they would have called her a diva. By ignoring it and focusing on basketball, she exposes them as the bullies. It is impossible to overestimate Sophie Cunningham's significance in this tale. Although we sometimes see sports through the prism of individual conflicts, partnerships are frequently the true story. Cunningham embodies the WNBA's grinder attitude. Darling, she's not a media personality. She battles for every bit of respect she receives. Millions of admirers who share her displeasure at Clark's treatment will be validated if the reports are accurate. It demonstrates that these aren't only irrational fan theories. It demonstrates that there is an awareness within the league that things have gone too far. Her failure to participate in the narrative may indicate a spiritual boycott of the hazing culture rather than a real refusal to attend games. It is an unwillingness to participate in the methodical dismantling of a generational talent. The selection committee, which is made up of former players, coaches, and administrators who are deeply ingrained in the WNBA's history, is the gatekeeper. They see the national team as a reward for years of service, a gold watch for a career well spent, rather than as a marketing vehicle or a showcase of the current best talent. This disconnect between basketball purists and business reality is what caused this train wreck. They completely misread the room and failed to realize that for the new wave of fans, Caitlin Clark is the WNBA. It's like throwing a concert and ordering the main act to wait in the parking lot when she leaves her house. What about the actual jersey number? Why is number 12 so painful? Numbers are identity in the psychology of sports. Michael Jordan is 23 years old. Wayne Gretzky is 99. The age of Caitlin Clark is 22. It would be an attempt to deprive her of her identity to give her any other number. However, offering a number that is specifically linked to the end of the bench is a particular kind of psychological warfare. Claims that you are interchangeable. On a larger scale, it is a microaggression. It's the kind of stuff that leaves athletes with a lifelong chip on their shoulder. The committee did more than simply decide on the roster, if this story is accurate. They produced a monster. They provided Clark with all the inspiration she would ever need to smash every record in the book. You can guarantee that she will be setting the conditions, not them, when she does make the Olympic team in 4 years. For USA Basketball, the consequence has been a PR disaster. At every opportunity, they have had to answer inquiries regarding Clark. The ghost of the person who wasn't present has stolen the spotlight from the players who did make the squad outstanding athletes in their own right. The internet erupted with remarks like, Caitlin would have made that pass or Clark would have hit that shot, whenever the squad faltered or appeared lethargic. The entire tournament was shadowed by the snub. They generated a tenfold greater distraction by attempting to evade Caitlin Clark's distraction. Despite their desire to concentrate on the team, they spent the entire discussion talking about the one non-team member. It was an enormous strategic failure. Then there are the reports of internal strife. The WNBA sorority may be breaking up if players like Sophie Cunningham are really resisting the status quo. The league was a close-knit community for a very long time. The world is against us. But now that money is coming in and attention is surging, fissures are starting to appear. The haves and the have-nots exist. Both players who profit from the Clark boom and those who dislike it exist. The episode involving jersey number 12 is probably only the beginning. It is a sign of jealousy, a much more serious illness. Seeing someone gain everything you've worked 10 years for in 10 minutes is difficult. It's just human nature. However, the league's role is to control those egos, not to feed them. The league didn't succeed. They allowed the prisoners to run the facility, which had disastrous effects on public relations. Let's take a moment to think about.
Revealed in secret term sheets in preliminary agreements. According to reports from the sports industry, each brand delivers comparable figures that, when combined throughout numerous partnerships, created a total portfolio value estimated in billions rather than millions when projected over multi-year commitments. According to reports, one of the top contenders was a telecom giant with significant market penetration in Southeast Asia. Numerous sportswear companies entered crucial discussions by interpreting the cultural imprint AIA controlled throughout a sizable and growing customer population. She was considered indispensable by tech companies looking for genuine ambassador voices in emerging areas. These offers were unique not just because of their size but also because of their structure. Brands weren't contacting AIA's management to see about how she fit into the current frameworks for WTA neighboring partnerships. They were building entirely custom setups, creative collaborations, ownership stakes, sponsored content initiatives, and long-term ambassador infrastructures that viewed her as more than just an athletic endorser. In an interview with industry publications, a sports marketing analyst characterized the situation with startling candor. Brands had made the fundamental decision that going around the tour rather than through it was a more effective way to access the emotional connection AIA created with the audience. Although useful for reaching big tennis audiences, the WTA's official partnership infrastructure was unable to provide the precise, intensely devoted, culturally unique groups that personally followed AIA. This information had serious financial ramifications for the WTA. The collective loses power when businesses shift sponsorship funds from organizational alliances to individual athlete agreements outside of tour facilities. Visibility is lost for other players. Financial streams are lost in smaller competitions. The burden is felt by the entire ecosystem. This is the aspect that actually made the tension more intense. This situation wasn't created by AIA. She wasn't taking an antagonistic stance against any organization. Rather, her representation was merely using the right business strategy to address extraordinary market demand. That isn't a revolt. That's business. However, the WTA penalties were the same for all purposes. Tour execs were having heated conversations behind closed doors. When one of its own members is now a more desirable individual investment than the group platform, how can an organization maintain sponsorship significance? In order to accommodate an athlete whose personal audience outweighs institutional reach, how might commercial frameworks designed for a pre-social media context be reorganized? These were no longer speculative strategic inquiries. They needed answers very away. And the WTA seems to be looking for the answers far too slowly for reasons that will eventually become very public. Whether AIA deserved these offers wasn't the big question. No one really questioned that. Much more unsettling was the question that was tearing through tennis boardrooms. Had the commercial story already been lost by the WTA? If so, would they ever be able to get it back? When there is a systemic catastrophe, silence is never really quiet. It can communicate everything. The WTA's official communication channels were noticeably silent as marketing talks with Alex Eala heated up and sports business media started to formally connect the dots. There was only institutional inaction at the exact moment when bold action was most needed. No formal acknowledgement, no strategic positioning statement, and no clear attempt to reframe the commercial conversation on their terms. And it was horrible to be silent. In today's media landscape, an organization's failure to control its own narrative creates more than just a void. It gives everyone else the microphone. The WTA created an interpretive gap that was quickly filled by rival sports organizations, tennis journalists, sports marketing analysts, and fan communities across continents. The story being told without them was unflattering. It showed a governing body caught completely off guard by a change that, looking back, had been observed for years. This delayed reaction had complex underlying structural factors. Working across multiple jurisdictions, the WTA concurrently balances conflicting interests from players, competitions, broadcasters, and well-known business partners. Under normal circumstances, decision-making within that framework proceeds deliberately because deliberateness exhibits responsibility governance.